Welcome everyone to the Virtual Friday lesson. Today we're learning all about photography and we're getting into what's called a photo gallery or photo essay called The Dream Collector by Arthur Tress. Okay, so first for your warm-up, I had you look at two images. This is the first photo, and I had you point out some things about it in regards to lighting, who's in it. So in this image, right, this is an image of Zendaya. She's shooting for Lancome. And this image is trying to convey a certain idea in order to sell this perfume. So here are some of the things you could have pointed out about it. Up on a horse, the camera is looking up at her. The colors are bright. She's wearing this pink, light, flowy dress. She's glowing. Sky in the back is a purpley color, and you can see that there's some brightness behind her. So like a sunrise or the sun behind her. So in this image, we as the viewer are looking up at her, right? And there's this kind of like holy sort of image with the sun coming behind her, like that sort of idyllic or godly imagery. So the messaging behind this, when they released this perfume, this is the message that they released the perfume with. To the generation that dreams big, strong women, empowered and outspoken. To the leaders of tomorrow, daring, pursuing new horizons and having a new path. I always say my idol is my future self. So look at this image and think, did the photographer taking this photo successfully convey this message that the perfume company put out? I mean, think about it. You as the photographer, you're looking up at her, right? And we look up to our idols. So he used that perspective or that angle in order to convey that message. There is the light behind her, this kind of like new horizons, right? The sunrise. She's seen as a strong, empowered woman. Look at her face, right? She's serious. And she's on this horse, right? It's kind of like people ride horses into battle. So you see this kind of strong leader imagery to this image. So I think they conveyed it well. So here's the next image, right? And this is A$AP Rocky for Dior. Now this is a little bit different. It's in black and white. He's in a city, so you can really see his background. It's not as much like the Zendaya photo, just about her. This is about him in the city, right? So the city is supposed to influence how we feel about this photo. So he's wearing all black, right? He's in streetwear, all black streetwear, combat boots. And the camera is looking at him straight on, right? It's not looking down at him. It's not looking up at him. It's just looking straight on. And sometimes this creates a very confident tone in images. It's like we don't need to look up at him. We're not looking down on him. We're just looking based on he is as he is. The background around him is pretty faded and muted in color. So he is clearly what we are looking at. So the advertisement messaging, this cologne is an alluring combination of power and freshness, intensely woody and masculine. Its fragrance takes hold and leaves a lasting impression. Artfully crafted with raw sophistication, Dior Homme is a man confident in both his strength and his tenderness. So what this photographer is trying to emphasize with this photo is power and freshness, but also masculinity and sophistication. The last line is a man confident in strength and tenderness, right? And this is kind of conveyed in this image right here. We're looking at him head on. We're not looking up at him. He's confident in his space and stands out in sophistication in this image. So what do you think? Did the photographer successfully convey this message in this image? So one thing that I want you to see is how the different elements of this photo, right? The lighting, the color, the angle, who's in it, what's in it, the setting, help to convey some sort of message that the photographer is trying to get across. Oftentimes we'll look at a photo and it'll inspire us, or we won't. Just think about the photos you turned in for the inspo wall in my classroom. You might see an image and it inspires you, but you might not be able to articulate or describe why it inspires you. And all of these little elements like lighting, angle, who's in it, what they're wearing, all of these things go into the overall message and feeling that you get. And one thing I also want to talk about is that both of these images are trying to sell a fragrance. They both have the same goal, right? But these different photo elements convey their unique messages that allow them to access different audiences. The same audience is not going to buy A$AP Rocky's cologne as they are going to buy Zendaya's perfume. So now we can talk about things like lighting and direction of the photo and things like that, but there are specific vocabulary words that we're going to use to talk about these, and you're going to need to use these vocabulary words in your activity later on. So we're going to talk about them. They are composition, perspective, angle, lighting, color, subject, and location. And all of these things, plus many more that we don't need to talk about right now, all of these things go into a photograph. And we're going to use these words to just kind of think about and analyze photographs a little bit more specifically than just looking at them and saying how we feel about them. Okay, so first is composition. Composition is all about the arrangement of items and setting in the photograph itself. And the things that are in the back are the background, and the things that are in the front are in the foreground, right? So when we talk about what's in the background versus what's in the foreground, we're talking about what's further away versus what's close. So in this image, what's in the background are these mountains. There's a mountain, there's clouds, there's some grass, and then in the foreground is a boat, all these flowers, and this woman sleeping in the boat. You see an umbrella. The composition of this photograph allows us to focus on this woman in the boat rather than this mountain. If the photo was supposed to emphasize the mountain might be closer up or something else would be happening with it. But it's clear that because she is in the foreground, she is what we're supposed to be noticing in this photograph. That brings me to the subject. So the subject is the primary figure, object, or other content in a photograph. So in this photo by Ty O'Neill, the subject would be this man on the horse, right? This man and the horse. The subject is also in the foreground, so oftentimes it'll be closer than the background. You wouldn't look at this photo and say, yeah, this guy up here in the bleachers is the subject. No, the photograph or the photographer is clearly taking a photo of this man doing this action right here. Also be an object, so pick a random object like, an animal. Say you're outside and there's a squirrel on the ground and you take a photo of the squirrel. The squirrel would be your subject, right? It's whatever you're trying to take a photo of. Next is perspective or angle. This word vantage point just means the location from which you're standing, right? It's the angle or height from which your photograph is being taken. The camera could be looking down at the subject. It could be looking up at the subject, looking sideways at the subject. It could also be looking straight at the subject. The subject could be far away or close, depending on. So if you look at this image right here, this is clearly the subject. It's the only person in the photo. But the photographer is standing kind of far away from the subject and is looking down at the subject. And by doing this, the photographer is emphasizing this long path. The long path becomes more of the subject than the actual subject does, right? And so it changes the message of this photo by emphasizing, this person has a long way to go. Now, if the photographer took the photo from this point right here, and you could see all of this in the back, the message might be something more like, this person has come a long way. So did you see how the perspective and looking down at this person and seeing how far they have to go, it changes the message, the overall message of the photo itself. And like in that Zendaya photo, we were looking up at her because the point of the perfume was idol, something you look up to. Next is lighting and color. So this is the use of light, shadow, and color in a photo. Something can be bright or dark, black and white versus colorful, and then different colors mean certain things. So like in the Zendaya photo, she was wearing pink. And I promise you, whenever you see pink in photography, they're always making a statement about femininity or masculinity, because especially in this country, pink is so closely associated with femininity. So in photography, when pink is used, it's always making a comment, either criticizing traditional views of masculinity or femininity, or emphasizing some sort of femininity in something. So in this photo to the right, we'll start with the bottom one. So this is a woman pushing a baby carriage, and it's unique because usually this is a very happy, joyous thing, but this is a very cold, shadowy, looming, black and white photo. So it has a completely different effect than you would expect. Then this photo on the top, everything in the image is dark except for this light, which is illuminating these beautiful feathers on the bird. It's almost as if you would not have been able to see this beautiful light, these beautiful feathers, without this light and this darkness around it. So this photographer is clearly trying to emphasize the beauty in the wings here. And that's how they're using light and shadow in order to create this image. And lastly is location, right? This is the plane or this place or the scene where the photograph is taken. So in this image, you see these run-down buildings behind, and then these women in these beautiful new fancy garments, right? And so they stand out because they're so new, fresh, they're jumping, and joyous coloring, but the background is so void of color, right? So the background helps emphasize the beauty in their movement, in their clothing.